Welcome to today's Family Connection Point. We're in Matthew chapter 22, verses 15 through 33. Our object lesson will be using coins. I have a group of coins here, and I plan on asking my children whose picture are on the front of these coins. We have Thomas Jefferson, we have George Washington, Roosevelt, Abraham Lincoln, and I even have some from some other countries that have Queen Elizabeth's picture on it. And I plan on asking my children this. Did you know that Jesus taught a very significant lesson about allegiance with a coin? And we're going to talk about that today. But let's jump into our story. Jesus is questioned by three different groups of people. He's actually asked two separate questions, but by three different groups of people today. And both of them are trying to trap Jesus. And so the first two groups of people that got together were actually, it's a strange partnership. It's the Herodians and the Pharisees. And they would normally be on opposite ends of the spectrum, almost enemies. But because they had a common purpose, they wanted to destroy Jesus, they came together. The Herodians were aligned with the Roman government, and the Pharisees were more pure, and they would never align themselves with the Roman government. But they came together to ask Jesus a question. And notice how they asked this question. Before they ever ask him the question, they start buttering Jesus up and saying, "You're a great teacher. We know you don't really care what anyone thinks. You're going to tell us the truth because that's who you are, Jesus." And they don't really want an answer here, guys. They're trying to divide Jesus's following. And so this is what they asked. They asked the question, is it right to pay the Roman government taxes? And what they thought they were going to do is trap Jesus. They thought if Jesus said, yes, it's right to pay taxes, there would be a large group of people who would say, no, that's not right. That's not right. You're agreeing with the people who are putting us in bondage, Jesus. And if he said, no, it's not right, he'd be seen as a rebel, or maybe even seen as by the Roman government as someone who's inciting a rebellion, and that would serve their purpose as well. But Jesus holds up a coin and says, whose inscription or whose picture is on this? And it was Caesar's. And he says this, give to Caesar's what is Caesar's, and give to God what is God's. And both the Herodians and the Pharisees walked away defeated. They didn't know how to answer that. They didn't have any comeback to that. So we see a second group of people come in, and they are the Sadducees. They'd be seen as like the religious liberals. They didn't believe in the supernatural. They didn't believe in angels. They did not believe in the resurrection from the dead. And so what they ask is they ask this hypothetical question. That's a ridiculous question. You got to love hypothetical questions. But they ask this question and they say this. Here's the scenario, Jesus. There's a woman who's married and her husband dies. And then her brother marries her, which was the custom of the time. And then he dies. And then that happens 7 times. So she has 7 husbands that all die. And then she dies. And they ask, well, whose wife will she be when she gets to heaven? And Jesus answers it in 2 ways. He says, listen, y'all don't understand heaven. You don't understand heaven. Heaven's not like earth. It's not the same earthly pleasures that you enjoy here. No one is given to marriage in heaven. You're not going to be married. You have a glorified body. It's going to be different. But not only do you not understand heaven, you don't understand the Old Testament. You don't understand Moses' teaching. You see, when God came to Moses in the burning bush, long after Abraham was already passed away, he announced his entrance by, he said, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And Abraham was already long gone. And he didn't say, I was, like Abraham used to exist. He said, I am. And what he's pointing out is that God himself said that Abraham was still around. There must be a resurrection. So they didn't understand their own scriptures. But we're going to go back to that illustration with the coin and just give a simple application for our children. What Jesus is saying is there's a place to be submitted to your government, but ultimately they can have your goal, but God deserves your heart. God wants your full allegiance, your full heart, your full devotion. Romans chapter 12 verse 1 says it this way, I urge you, brothers, to present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable act of service. You see, we are created in God's image. We belong to God. Therefore, when he asks us to do something, we say yes, because our allegiance, number one allegiance, belongs to God. And part of that is coming to a place in every one of our lives where we say, Jesus is the most important thing. He's more important than money. He's more important than relationships. He's more important than anything else in this world. He is number one, and my allegiance belongs to him. And so that's the lesson that we want to teach to our children. Although there's a place to pay taxes and to give the government your gold, God wants your heart. He wants your full allegiance because we are created in his image. Thank you for joining us today.